Hi students! In this lesson, we're going to go over a few type and layout tips for your newsworthy project. Establishing a horizon line is the most important layout technique you will need for your type on your newsworthy project. In simple terms, it's a horizontal line that aligns your text from frame to frame. So let's take a look. It's a pretty simple idea to understand. The first line across the text here, the smaller type, is on the same line from frame to frame to frame. And then our emphasis type is also on the same horizontal line from frame to frame to frame. This helps create unity and consistency with your typography and creates a really good foundation for your layout. The second tip is to use consistent type size and weight in your layout. So in this example, the introductory line of type for each phrase is always set to the same size. And then our bold emphasis text is also always set to the same size. And you can see that in the example the student does do a little bit of variation, and all of you will have that opportunity in your layout. But you really want to establish two sizes that you initially want to work with, and then also make sure that the size is dramatically different between your regular text and your emphasis text. Line width is simply the width of the sentence that you lay out on the screen. And what you want to try to do is consistently do that from frame to frame. And we can see that in this example, risk of extreme is pretty close to current levels. And the same for drought, wildfires, and floods is pretty similar to of greenhouse gas. So you want to look for that type of consistency from frame to frame. And how you can do that is when you put your initial paraphrasing together for each frame to tell your story, try to edit it down so there's a similar amount of words so that the layout can be consistent. One thing we'd like everyone to avoid is having really long line widths. That means taking a sentence and running it all the way across the screen. Try to break those line widths down into smaller, sizable chunks so it's easier to read and it's also easier to animate. I can't stress negative space enough. What you want to do is frame your layout by just giving everything a consistent negative space around it. So if we look at these two frames, you can see that the amount of space around the typography is pretty consistent between the two frames. But also, the amount of negative space around the icon that the student has created is also really consistent from frame to frame. The key is just give it enough room. You don't have to fill the screen with typography and with your icon. Give everything some space. The vertical space between type is called leading, and that is just simply the distance between each line of type. So what you want to do is establish a consistent use of space from each frame to frame. So when we establish the horizon line, it really helps with controlling our vertical spacing. So if we look closely at this example, the distance between causing and the top of risk is actually the same distance between the bottom of the E and the top of the D. And then the student chose to do a tighter spacing with their words of emphasis. Once they've developed this formula for the spacing, they simply implemented it again and again with their frames. So you want to develop a formula from the first frame that you design. You're going to use the techniques we just talked about. Horizon line, type size and width, your overall consistent line width, using negative space consistently, and then your vertical spacing of the type. So once you design one frame, you want to consistently try to implement that same approach to each and every frame that you design. Your overall goal for the newsworthy project should be that it's easy to read, but yet visually dynamic based on your type choices and also your use of icon and color.